Good morning, all. First of all, let me welcome all to the Construction Philosophies webinar 2820 on Architect Act Section 37. Today we have Mr. Habeeb Khan, President of National Council of Architects with us, Dr. Anil Joseph, Structural Engineer, Managing Director of Geostructurals Private Limited. And we have Mr. Ajith, Managing Director of Ajith Associates. And we have Mr. Avinash Shirode, Consultant Engineer and former ISRO Engineer, NSS-Space Ambassador. And we have Mr. Sapna, who is the Vice President of National Council of Architecture. And Mr. Suryaprakash, who is the Founding Trustee of Smart Infr-EST. And today's moderator is Mr. Gauridasan Nair, who is the Editorial Chief of Construction Philosophy magazine. And the host of this event is myself, Nebu Abraham, editor and publisher of Construction Philosophy magazine. And our co-host is Mr. Divya Divarkar, who is the executive editor for Construction Philosophy magazine. On behalf of Construction Philosophy magazine, I would like to welcome all to the show. And I would request Divya to take up the moment and give a brief introduction of the magazine.
Very good morning, all. Welcome to Construction Philosophy's webinar. So today you have all find your valuable time to spare with us. So Construction Philosophy is a national publication which was launched in the month of May 2019. It was launched by respected CEO of L&T Infra Engineering, Mr. P.G. Venkatram, jointly with President Credai, Cochin, Mr. Ravi Jacob. And we have already published 8 issues in the magazine. I'll just scroll on with our cover pages. This was a launch, and this was we launched with an exclusive interview from Dr. E. Sridharan, and these were the previously available issues of our magazine. So you can visit our Facebook page and you can give your valuable feedback there. And you can write to mail at constructionphilosophy.com for any feedback. And now I'm handing over to Mr. Gauridasan Nair to take up the session.
Thank you, Nebu and Divya. And good morning to all of you who are possibly the icons of this construction industry in India as architects, designers, and builders and structural engineering experts. See, as briefly hinted by Nebu and Divya, we are a publication which is just completing 1 year. And we have been fortunate to have the blessings and guidance of all of you, many of you sitting in and practicing your professions in different parts of India. And over the last 1 year, we have tried to be different from others in the sense that we are not a product finder magazine. We are a magazine which tries to look at issues relating to construction industry with as much depth and breadth as is possible within our limited capabilities. But we have had some of the finest experts in the profession, related professions, contributing to our magazine every month. So we thought it should be our responsibility to take up this issue of the Supreme Court verdict of March relating to the Architects Act of 1972. As all of you are aware, this is nothing new. We have seen several rounds of litigation over this one single issue and Section 37 of the Architects Act. And we have seen reiteration of one position challenged by the Council of Architects to the position taken by courts. And we know that the latest of the cases on which the Council had gone with an appeal to the Supreme Court relates to government posting. And if you look at the history of Section 37 and the challenges that it has met with in courts, most of these have had to do with government positions as architecture assistants, assistant town planner, etc., etc. But the judgment per se is not limited to government posting. It has amounted to a reinterpretation of the Section 37 of the Architects Act, and quite naturally, this has created quite a churn within the profession of architecture, and also the other associated professions, because what is at stake here is, if we are right, at stake here is the professional skill set as qualified and registered and validated by institutions that have been created by acts of parliament. In this case, the Architects Act of 1972. So I think this is something which, and the Council of Architects has been, I must say, hats off to them. They have been pursuing this case in courts after court. And even when the Attorney General of India, Shri K.K. Venugopal, came up with his arguments before the two-judge Supreme Court bench in March, the council has been putting forward several arguments on this. So I think this is an issue which cannot be which cannot afford oversight, which cannot be ignored, because if this same principle is applied to several other professions, like for instance, we know that similar challenges have happened in the case of the medical practitioners in relation to the Advocates Act. On both those occasions, the courts have been very careful in interpreting the law, but whereas in this case, it is gone by what I would say, within quote unquote, a plain reading of the section, stating that the plain reading of the section, if it clarifies the position, there need not be an in-depth analysis of the intent. So I'm happy that we have some of the best brains from different parts of India, sitting with us. I would like to set the ball rolling with senior most person among us, Shri Avinash Shirode. Please, your views.
I think it would be much better if Mr. Habeeb Khan starts
I know. I was just
he's in a position. He's in a position. Yeah.
Okay.
Perpetual hot seat.
So, okay, great. Shri Habeeb Khan. Obviously, you're the right person to speak about this, and also after you, as the Vice President of the Council of Architects, Srimati Sapna, ma'am, there, please.
See, let us put this into right perspective. I'll just very briefly tell you the history of the whole thing. The Act was enacted in 1972. It's been more than 50 years now. The architectural profession since then has grown leaps and bounds and has changed drastically and has become more and more complex. And it has become more inclusive than it was in 1972. So it is but natural that the draft that happened at that time, there were certain omissions. I don't know if they were deliberate or inadvertently it happened, that the definition of the architectural practice was not included in the Act. And that 37, that clause that you're talking of actually speaks of that. So there's a need to amend that, and there's a need to add the definition of architectural services. And we need to be inclusive in the whole process, where we know that the architectural practice these days has become very complex and has become inclusive of all the engineering services that we have. And we cannot think of doing a project without other engineering and other mark services. So we need to really think about it, and we need to see how we can be more accurate in defining the architectural services. More so ever, I mean, if you see, since 1972, this Act has been in existence, and with few handful of architects and very few institutions, we have grown to more than 465 institutions now, and more than 1,15,000 or so architects. So the profession has grown, the society has become aware of architectural services, and gradually the awareness will increase. So there is nothing to worry about. Supreme Court has only interpreted what is written in the Act, because the job of a court is to interpret the law, and they've already done that, and it's there in the Act. Before the Supreme Court, 3 or 4 high courts have said the same thing. So it's not no sky has fallen over. Nothing is going to change. We have to take it very positively and move ahead and see what can be done. So judgment very clearly says that it defeats the purpose of the Act. So we need to undo that entire thing, and we need to amend the Act accordingly.
Yeah, I'm primarily a journalist. I'm inclined to ask you how, because successively you have challenged it, but unfortunately or fortunately or whatever, the courts have been very consistent, more or less consistently rejecting the arguments put forward by the Council of Architects.
Absolutely, because it is not there in the Act itself. It's not written in the Act. So the job of a court, I think, is to interpret the law, what is written in the Act. They can't go beyond that. I mean, it's a plain reading. The Supreme Court judgment says very clearly it's a plain reading of the Act, although it defeats the purpose of the Act itself. So I'm sure as a journalist, what is the process of amending the Act and, how it is tabled in Parliament. And, I'm sure you are aware of all that. We'll be doing that. We're working on that, and very soon we'll be doing that. We're also going to file an appeal. We feel that there is certain omissions, certain exclusions that have happened. We will definitely ask the Honorable Supreme Court to look into it.
Yeah, Avinash.
Yeah, I would like to clarify to my friend Habeeb Khan ji that when the Architects Bill was introduced in Rajya Sabha in 1968, the original bill had contemplated all these things, that the profession of practice of architecture was included in that exclusively for the architects. It was also that the title of the architect was also there and all that. But there had been several meetings of the Joint Parliamentary Committee. I have a record of each and every word what was spoken in Rajya Sabha right from 1968 to 1972 when the bill was passed. And I have gone through every word of it, and I can share it with you. Of course, you must also be having it. And there was absolutely not a single word of mention that this exclusiveness was removed. And other professionals, and who are other professionals? Only engineers. Not a man on the road or a BA or BCom or BSc is going to practice architecture. It's only architects and engineers that is there. And all those things which were restricting or which were giving only the exclusiveness to the architects was removed by the Joint Parliamentary Committee. And Dr. Bhalla, who was the then president of Indian Institute of Architects, he had written a letter, and Mr. Samuel, who was the chairman of Joint Parliamentary Committee that time, he had welcomed that, and they said only let us be happy with picking the title architect and not the practice of profession of the architect. That was very clearly mentioned, and all those things are there. Now, as Mr. Habeeb very rightly said, that it is just a plain reading of the law, of the act only. They have not gone into why it is like this or why it is not like this. Nothing. It is not under their scope. Now, all this uproar and sense of insecurity, why it should be there, nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. All the architects are happy what they are doing. All the engineers are happy what they are doing. Nobody is going to encroach or nobody is going to steal or snatch away anybody's work or project or anything. Now, the basic mindset has to be changed. And it has to be changed like this, that it is not only the class of professionals who are competent or eligible to do that type of work. There are other class of persons like engineers who are equally qualified, equally trained, equally competent. Rather, I would say boldly, sorry for that, they are more competent. So they can execute the project. If we see that from the total quantum of the project, right from inception, planning, till completion, till maintainability, if we can see that the part of the architectural planning comes hardly 50 to 20%. The rest of it is only engineering and total engineering. So we don't say, we respect,
I'm sorry, I absolutely disagree.
Yeah.
No, okay, let me complete. Everybody has a right to agree to disagree. So all these things are there. So nothing is going to change. Nobody on the road is going to practice the architecture. So everything which is going, unfortunately, this has happened only since last 20 years. Just 20 years, it has, when the National Building Code was was under revision in 2002, 2003 or something. And that time this whole thing came out that, I'm so sorry that even our president of Council of Architecture had called engineers as quacks, and from that moment, the whole thing started. Before that, even today, if you see the comments of the senior architects, they're very cooperative. There should be absolutely no confrontation. There should be no competition. It should be only cooperation, because we are giving a product to the public. And why should we worry about it? Because in the past, it was survival of the fittest. Now, it is survival of the talents. So whoever has the talent will deliver the project. And the projects are seen by the people are known by the projects they build, and not by just by their name. So and it is for the whole act is, the whole act is for general public. So let the public decide from whom they want service.
Yes, sir, the point is taken. I think you have stated your point very well. Can I just go to Srimati Sapna ji? Can you just, not by way of response, but stating the situation and probably also looking at the dimensions that have been flagged by Sri Avinash ji.
Yeah, thank you so much, and good morning to everyone. With due regards to everybody, would just like to start with one instance which just came in my mind when Mr. Avinash was sharing that, see, I am mother of 2 daughters, and being a mother, I have been a wonderful best doctor to my daughter. And I'm a wonderful psychologist. They come to me, share anything. And I've been practicing this psychology for the last more than 20 years. But would you let me go and practice outside as a psychologist just because I've been practicing this and I'm very good at it? So just a moment, I want to say that there is, when Mr. Avinash was sharing, that let everybody do their job and there is no encroachment. So let us be very clear, what are the skills which are required from the architect and what are the skills which are required from engineers. We are not saying we are going to encroach anybody. So for an architect, it is basically the design skills which we require for a project, which means aesthetics, which means functionality, which means creativity. And this is what we have been taught in our college, our syllabus says that. I just want to know, is there any syllabus like that in engineering side? If yes, I would glad to know that. But to me, there is no designing skills as per the designing skill, as per aesthetics, functionality, and creativity, which is taught in engineering department or engineering colleges. So the point is, I strongly say I do respect all the professionals, but there is the boundaries, our architects' boundaries are the designing part. And yes, the moment the design has been conceptualized, all other professionals come into this, maybe structural engineers, maybe HVAC, electrical, everything. So you respect, it's a time to give respect to each other, not the time to fight, that this is my area and this is my area. And judgment has not changed anything. I totally agree. Judgment has only interpreted what was there in the act. But now definitely it's our role now as a council. We will definitely go and, do with the amendment of the act.
Yeah, thank you. I will go to Sri Habeeb Khan. I know I will come back to you, but let's hear other voices as well before we come back. Sri Suryaprakash.
Hello. Yeah, it's a good discussion that we have started actually. Instead of sitting in our own rooms and thinking about this issue, it is better we openly discuss. And my point is this Architects Act has been there for the last 50 years and it has been misinterpreted in many cases and in many ways. And it has been, there has been, at any given time, there are so many litigations pending in the courts. And the current Supreme Court judgment brings it to a halt, actually. And of course, there will be appeals. But still, as a professional, I feel that when it comes to the built environment, there are certainly some projects where architects should play lead role, that is design. And wherever the client feels the architectural design plays a key role, it should be an architectural design competition and it should be selected. But if you see in India, most of the projects, maybe 90% don't go for this kind of design competition, and they require basically planning, design, construction. And we have done the study on how many disciplines are there in any project. There are some 60 disciplines in the project. And out of 60 disciplines, 10 disciplines require architect education actually, like interior design or landscaping or architectural planning, form design, and all that. So there is no dispute. Nobody questions the competence of an architect in these 10 disciplines. And it is for the builder, developer, owner, implementing agency to decide what is the importance and the significance of this role in each project. And they have to engage the professionals concerned with that competence actually. So coming to other 50 disciplines out of 60 in engineering, as most of us know, it is mechanical, electrical, plumbing, air conditioning, firefighting, civil engineering, structural engineering, construction management. These are all some of the things that we can think immediately. And these disciplines require engineers' role actually. So the question is, who should lead the project here? So when I say leading the project, the one who can deliver the project, that has to be decided by the owner, implementing authority, and developer, whoever is developing the project. Once I had two projects, for example. I'll give a quick example. One project was both are high-rise projects actually. In one project, client approached us and we have decided the structural system and asked the owner to fix the plan around that structural system, because it is a high-rise building. Structural system plays a bigger role. So he has followed that, and we have achieved some costing of the structure. For the same client, another project where architect has frozen the plans and client has come to us, and he asked us to design. We said that this will lead to higher cost. The client said the marketing team has already sold with these plans, so we cannot sell this project. So then we had to design, and the structural cost of that has gone up by 30%. Though number of floors were less, both are high-rise. So this is just an example to cite which plays a key role. If the client feels that cost is a main thing, then he has to fix the structural system and then plan around it. So here it is not the question of who will lead in the front and all. It is the client who has to decide the prerogative of the importance and the precedence of the things, whether it is a cost or whether it is a design that can sell, and ultimately it is the end user. We are all working for the end users who should be happy and at the cost they spend and the value they should get. So with these few words, I would like to mention that there should be a...
That's a very interesting middle ground. Now let me please bring in Dr. Anil Joseph, who also is, somewhere in the middle. Please, Dr. Anil Joseph.
Yeah, good morning all. So in between, I got disconnected due to a power failure here and I rejoined back. So I might have missed few words, which are a few important points which have been shared in between. This is a really situation because this is a profession where this construction industry needs all the specialization. So it's an age of specialization, and architect is a specialization of a particular this thing, the view, the perspective, the science which they are learning is connected to that. So along with that, the stability and the other part, civil engineers play a vital role on the structural aspects. And as a designer, if you take a overall concept, yes, the role of an architect is definitely there, and architect is a profession by itself. But if you take the Indian scenario as a whole, that rule, when a rule has to be passed in the parliament, it has to be applied across the country. So if that role of exclusively planning is given only to architects, what will happen is that there are few areas, especially in Northeast or in Lakshadweep, there is only one architect. So we cannot have that exclusive license, because it's, again, like Surya pointed out, it is the customer who has to take a call. And then affordability, because the architect might have come up with beautiful plan. Yeah, it's a challenging profession. So much of good architects we know and very close front of ours. But the problem is that if it is exclusively done, it's a teamwork. So everybody has to play their part, and mutual respect should be the key. as we move forward. Yes, if the license or the discretion is exclusively given to an architect, what will happen is that it cannot capture the entire thing. But the architect profession has to be given importance. It has to go, but then it is up to the owner to take the call. Because if it's a exclusively thing that because it can be done only by an architect, what will happen is that many people cannot afford to have buildings, or in certain areas. So when we were having these issues, I mean, when the discussion on NBC 2005, there were only about 10,000, 12,000 architects. Now they have about 1 lakh people. And India with a 1.3 billion population and the requirement of housing in such an extent, we cannot exclusively have a system where only one profession is given the freedom. Yes, the clients know, the architects are have learned their subject quite well. They are good in planning and this thing, but then it cannot be made exclusive, because another important aspect is that the safety or the structural planning is a vital element. So why doctors are not, why other people are not allowed to practice as a doctor if they are not in MBBS or they are not registered with the council? They are not allowed to practice because that affects the life of the people. Now, architect is a sense, a beauty, and the beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and the concept also varies accordingly. So what I feel beautiful might not be beautiful for someone else. The space and accurate planning cannot affect the safety of the structure or safety of the life of the people. Whereas the structural engineer plays the vital role because the building stability or the foundation. So there are so much of specialization now. So we are structural engineers, but then we go for foundation experts for that, or grounding experts for that when a particular requirement is there. So like that, it's a system where everything have to coexist with mutual respect to each other. And that is what this forum, I congratulate Construction Philosophy for opening up. And I thank Habeeb and Sapna to joining this forum, because if we discuss among us and come to a viable solution, considering the importance of all the profession, then
I don't know.
Signal some issue.
Something.
Yeah, okay. Now I think Mr. Ajith is here. His voice is there. I don't know if his video is available. He's not visible. I would have loved to bring him in, but I would like to go back to Shri Habeeb Khan, because he said the sky has not fallen. I think that is a very interesting statement about the state of affairs right now, the state of play right now. And also, it would be amiss, it would be wrong to say that this is a law, an enactment which has lived its days and needs a relook. Because Mr. Avinash has clearly told us what were the discussions, what were the tenor and content of the discussions before the Joint Parliamentary Committee really gave its seal of approval for this enactment, beginning 1968-65 to 72. So I think much thought had gone into this, and also the question of exclusivity, I think, which was flagged by Mr. Just now by Suryaprakash and Mr. Anil Joseph. I think that is one. Secondly, I would also want Habeeb Khan to go beyond it and say, of course, Srimati Sapna mentioned it a bit. How can you allow a person who has no validated qualification to be practicing a profession? That issue. But I think this also applies to engineers. I think the draftsmen, the draftspeople, do the engineer's job at times. I think we need to look at all this.
See, first of all, looking at the way the discussion is happening, I can foresee the kind of resistance and the opposition that we'll face in the task that we have set for ourselves. Everyone in the panel is trying to justify the exclusiveness of their own profession and the importance of their own profession. Without getting into all those details, I absolutely disagree and resent the attitude that you all have. I have my own opinion. I absolutely disagree with whatever happened. There are two issues which are very vital that we need to understand. First, and the first issue is that architecture is not architectural profession. Architectural practice is is tangible and intangible. What you guys are looking at, you guys means engineers, that you're looking at is only the tangible aspect of the architectural profession. You are forgetting the intangible aspect of the architectural profession, wherein you talk of spaces, you talk of light, you talk of design, which changes the quality of life of the users, which I am sure only an architect can do and the engineers cannot do. So these are two aspects that we all need to understand and look into. And the intangible aspect is very difficult to comprehend. The intangible aspect is very difficult to see physically see by your eyes, or it has to be just felt. So that is an aspect which the engineers, friends, very coolly forget when they talk of architectural profession, building industry, or the whole entire construction process. That's very important. Secondly, the other important aspect is to define what exactly is architectural services. And I have told in my opening statement that it is an inclusive profession. The entire process of building and infrastructure is an inclusive profession. It cannot be an exclusive profession. And fortunately, all of us in the panel agree that we have to define our roles very clearly. And architectural practice does not mean that you are going to do structural design. I am a practicing architect. I have about 20-25 consultants working on my projects. I cannot imagine in my dreams even that I'll be able to design a high-rise building without my structural engineer friend, or do the plumbing services, or do mechanical services, plumbing, firefighting, electrical, name it. I will not be able to do it, and I don't want to do it. But it is the role of the architect to coordinate, because he has conceived the project. The project has been done as per his concept. So the coordination, I won't call it a leader. Gone are those days of leading a project. It is the coordination which happens with our fellow engineers, and it's a very important aspect of it. So we need to define exactly what is the role of an architect and what is the role of so many engineers working on a project to make it successful. And let us not get into history. What happened 50 years ago? What happened 60 years ago? Let's not get into that aspect at all. Because see, now the profession, like I said in my opening statement, has undergone drastic changes. Has transitioned into a very complex activity. And what happened 50 years ago? The wisdom of those people at 50 years, 60 years ago. Let us not question that, and let us relook at the whole new situation that our architecture profession is at the moment. So I do not want to dig graves. I do not want to take out skeletons from the cupboards or of the parliament discussion or of the learned people. I am not an authority to question on that, but I don't want to rely my future course of action on what happened 60 years ago or 50 years ago when the act was being debated in the parliament or by the JPC or by whatever. We will like our lawmakers, our honorable members of parliament and the government to relook at the whole thing. And if a mistake has happened earlier, let's say if it's a mistake, if it has happened earlier, we can always correct it. Let's not talk of history. Let's talk of what is going to happen in the future and how we are going to address this pertinent problem in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy. I'll come back to you, Avinash, sir. I have Mr. Ajith joining us. Welcome, Ajith. We are a little late. We have made the opening statements. Obviously, you know what's the position on these things. So I would want to. I mean, generally, we have had a fairly long discussion about the judgment, its import, about how the law came to be enacted, the circumstances, the changes that have happened over the last 50 years. So we are trying to look at the current situation, and we are not talking in terms of some tough battle here between architects and engineers. That's certainly not what the construction philosophy wants. He wants to look at the entire industry as a family, where we have to cohabit, we have to live together, understand each other, know our limitations, and also the huge contributions each one of us make to this profession. So, Ajith.
Good morning, Gauri and all participants, and especially the President of Council and all of this here. See, I think most important thing we should understand today is that basically architects and engineers are birds of the same feather, especially when you talk about construction industry. See, gone are the days of 60s or 70s when architecture was just architecture. Today, things are different. Today, it is highly technological oriented. But then what happens? See, what is the architect's role? But then this is a time that we precisely understand what is an architect's role and what is an engineer's role. And there are engineers, when you talk about engineers, not just civil engineers, you're talking about electrical engineers, you're talking about structural engineers, you're talking about engineers who are working on water management. So many engineers are there. So whole system is changed now, technologically oriented. So what happened, see, then there is, see, any such things, what happened is basically, I heard only the last part of what Habeeb said. I didn't hear last earlier. I'm so sorry, I'm late because of some technical problem on my system. I could come in only late. So what I'm trying to say is, as you please said in the last, basically, this is the course that we do. It's a 5-year course in which it says course in which include everything. In fact, we learn little about electrical, little about water supply, little about structural engineering, everything we learn. It is not because that we are going to do structural designing ourselves. It is not because we are going to do electrical design ourselves, because we are considered the people who, because we learn all this, and it's a 5-year program, it's a 4-year program. And when you do all this, we are supposed to do something like a coordination facility. When you say coordination, it does not mean that we are the leaders. You should understand also. It's a partnership. It's a partnership. And I would like to tell you, now I'm very happy Mr. Avinash is there. Actually, see, now actually, we are working on a new course. For the first time in the world, my college is working on a new course in association with ISRO. And we are working with people in ISRO and discussion. By now, it would have been there. I would have sent the proposal to COA for the approval. And that is what you call as astrospatial architecture. It is purely depending and used on the satellites, entire thing. So what happens, so we have become highly engineering this thing. So we need all their support, but all the same, we have to understand one very important thing is that architect is specially and specifically taught to design buildings. And that is an important thing, specifically and specially taught to design buildings. It's an extremely important point here. And we cannot, I heard the last part of Habeeb's talk, we cannot at all. Like I sometimes believe probably that even so much of structural engineer, we don't have to study because we are supposed to look after what? We are supposed to look after aesthetics, we are supposed to look after the functionality, and we are supposed to put in or coordinate with all the other engineers and see that everything is put in properly to make a structure. So that is so important. So we cannot be in conflict at all. There is no reason why an architect should be in conflict with any type of engineers I'm talking about. The architect has to be in partnership with it. We are the birds of the same flock, and we have to fly together. Only then a beautiful structure comes. Today, all those beautiful iconic structures you see in the world today, you know, whether in Dubai or United States of America or any of those.
Buildings are known by the names of the architects and not by the names of the engineers generally, you know.
It is different. It is different. Okay. I agree with you. But then what happens is, if you see any of the architectural books, if you see, you will see in that who is the architect, who is the structural engineer, who has been doing the electrical, all those things comes there now. It is not anymore that where only architect's name is there. And it will change, I'm telling you. One more thing I would like to say here. There is another very important thing I would like to know that has been brought up already. There is a what do you call Corona and post-Corona situation now.
Yeah.
We have to understand. So it's all the more important that we hold our hands together. And we need to come and be seen in the society as a single set of people, a single group of people. A person who
everyone should understand that, Ajith, everyone should understand, including engineers.
Exactly.
I think it's time to bring in Avinash Shirode.
Correct.
Please, sir.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Yes.
Yeah. I fully agree with Sapnaji's comment that we must respect each other's profession. Yeah. See, architects and engineers cannot be separated. They are the two sides of the same coin. Because why that is because of the overlapping things of what architect is doing and what engineers are doing. So that is there. Now, talking about the technology, what was there 60 years ago or 50 years ago, or what was there, and what was the environment or circumstances there that time, and how it has changed here now. But it has changed in all the aspects, not only in architecture, but all the building industry. So all the technology has come. Now we are building a colony on the moon, on the surface of moon and surface of the Mars by 2030. So
why do you want to go and
is
spoil Moon and Mars, Shirode? Why do you want to spoil? You already spoiled the Earth. You want to spoil them.
That's a
other
different issue.
planets
No,
as well.
I'm talking about the technology. I'm talking about the technology. So because of that, the now the architectural planning and all that. See, you have 5 years full training on that part, but it doesn't mean that others can't do. My favorite statement is always that imagination is nobody's monopoly. Even if we come to the scientist side and the invention side, the most illiterate person sitting in a garage has made a lot of inventions which even the PhD holders have not done. So similarly, in this, it's a artistic beauty, but that artistic beauty and fanciness cannot be at the cost of stability, strength, durability, sustainability, and lastly, the maintainability. So whose role is more important? And also, it is not that engineers cannot plan. They can plan rather better because they have the background of the mathematical fundamentals. So they can visualize the things better. See, so let me complete, Habeeb. So it is, they can do it much better. Now just tell me, do you say that every plan, drawing or design done by an architect is a good one, and every plan, drawing, design is done by an engineer is very bad? No, it is not that. There are architects who charge 5 to 7% fees, and still they are so flooded with work, they can't take due projects. And there are some architects who are happy with designing cattle sheds and watchman cabins, and nobody goes to them. Both are equal as far as the profession is concerned. But let the talent come out. And in your last JSW seminar also, there was a question that the Supreme Court ruling, who is going to benefit to whom? And the highest comments were that talented design professionals must come out. In the past, in the Jungle Raj, there was a survival of the fittest. Now, in our sophisticated, survival of the talent. So whoever is, whether he is an architect, whether he is an engineer, and we are doing it, we are delivering a product. So the client, who is getting that product, who is going to use it, the end user. So let him decide from whom he can get the best of the product, best of the services, best of the talented work. So why should we confront? Not at all. Let us not have watertight compartments as far as the profession is concerned. If I can design best, I had been a consultant for the last 40 years. I had done a lot of World Bank projects and all those things where I have competed with the architects. But I had been the most successful consultant. It's not my personal thing, but what I want to say is that we cannot restrict it to a particular class of professionals. There are also, I can boldly say, better persons who can do it, who can deliver a project, who can deliver a product much better way. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Suryaprakash, would you like to chip in with any view on this?
Thank you. I again reiterate my point that let the end user, let the developer, let the owner decide who should lead the project. Whether cost is important, whether aesthetics and appearance is important, or whether space planning has scope for value engineering. So this is the main thing. We cannot decide who should lead, engineer or architect. It is the owner, end user who will dictate. And I have been saying in India, 90% of the projects require value engineering and cost management.
Okay, thank you. I think both the statements, the statement made by Mr. Avinash and by Suryaprakash drives to the same point. One, that imagination is nobody's monopoly. Two, let the builder, let the project owner decide who should do what. Shrimati Sapna.
Yeah, I totally disagree with what Mr. Avinash just shared. See, point is, even Dr. Anil, said the planning aspect. So we have to be very clear. As an architect, we are not saying that all the planning is totally domain of an architect. We are saying the architectural planning is exclusive domain of an architect. Yes, after the planning, then, structural engineer, all other related services, become part of the project. So we are not saying the engineers are not connected with the planning of a project. They are definitely there, but talking of the architectural planning. Also I was just, going through this Architects Act, and when even the Supreme Court says word architect means the person who is registered in Council of Architecture. And I'm wondering then why the Architects Act is not only the domain of an architect? Why they are saying all other professions? Because it is saying Architects Act. So I would in fact say, let there be an act of structural engineers, let there be act of other engineers. That is perfectly fine. We are not encroaching on their domain. We are just saying that this Architect Act is exclusively should be for architects, so that people are aware what are the architectural services, we are going to render. So, and, saying that even Dr. Anil said, because in some areas there are less of architects, so why not engineers come? So if some areas there are less of architects, can an engineer treat a patient? So it is not that. I truly feel it's time to respect each other and know what are we, what are our skills. Let us not step on each other's shoes. That is my part.
Before going to Sri Khan or Mr. Anil Joseph, I want to bring in, I need to flag one point which I stated at the beginning. One, there are 2-3 issues here. One, this whole litigation process began in relation to government jobs and positions in government. One. Two, a related issue is one of certification. When you go with a plan to the local self-government, the certification is an issue. So it is an issue of individuals within government. It is an issue of individual and government, private citizens and government, local government. And thirdly, it is also about the profession of architecture as a career, as a teaching, a branch of study, and the need or the needlessness of there being a branch of study. Shri Habeeb Khan.
I missed last sentence. Can you say it again?
I said 3 points. One is within the government about positions and nomenclatures of positions in government. 2, about the relationship between the private individuals, citizens, as it is related to the local self-government institution, to whom you need to go with plans, with certified plans for approval. So where certified, registered architects certification may be necessary. I don't know the exact law. Third is about the aspirations of the younger generation who wants to study architecture. Now, this Supreme Court verdict, I have my fear, might result in young people asking, then why should we study architecture if we can practice this profession through experience alone?
Why young people? Everyone is asking the same question. Why young people? Let us be very clear about it. See, that's what I have just said in the earlier statements, that sky hasn't fallen. The Architect Act was there. All of us have been practicing successfully. The schools have been flourishing. There have been people who are taking admission. Nothing has changed. Why do you want to make it as if something has drastically gone wrong? Nothing has gone wrong. Let us be positive about it. Let us work together for the betterment of the built environment in our country. Let us contribute together with engineers, all aspects and all facets of engineers and architects put together to make our country.
Pardon me for interruption, Mr. Habeeb Khan. Okay, we hope we make these lofty statements about the professions and the cordiality among professions, but at the same time, we know very well within our hearts that there are issues. There are issues that needs to be met head on and need to be challenged.
Absolutely, there are issues. There are issues, and this time has come to make lofty statements. Time has come to talk of the future. Time has come to talk of the intangible. And because we have not been talking of it is the architectural scenario, the build scenario, the engineering scenario of our country is where it is. I don't know. This is not a forum to discuss the merits or demerits of what our built environment in our country is. The face of architecture is, the face of engineering is. This is not a forum to discuss that. But time has come to make lofty statements. Time has come to think Time has come to think where we are going. Time has come to think where we need to go ahead and what will be our roadmap ahead. See, you understand one thing. I don't want to address your mundane questions and your mundane points. There's a legal team looking into it. There are various learned people contributing to the whole thing. And this is not a forum where I am saying I am good or you are good. It's just a basic discussion that is happening about what the future of our profession should be. So you have to understand, if you compare the human body with the building industry or a built project or an architectural project, I understand the breathing in, the efficient, the digestive system, and all the engineering services that are there in our body are very vital. But we are also talking of something which is the intangible again, which is the soul, the purification of the soul, the way you are, the inner beauty, all that is architecture to me. But nevertheless, that is not a discussion now. As far as you're concerned, the future generation, I am again reiterating that nothing has happened so drastically. Let us not talk of the negatives, let us talk of the positives, and let us see what our roadmap for the future is. How we are going to achieve, leave that to us. We are learned enough and we are wise enough to do what we would want to do. So the idea is, I request everyone, the fraternity of architects and the fraternity of engineers, to look ahead and let's have a roadmap. In spite of our differences, in spite of our issues, let us come together and let us make this built environment of our country much better than what it is at the moment.
Yes, Anil Joseph, I've not heard you for some time.
Yeah, so the discussion, the major issue here is that I think I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So the major issue here is that the architect profession, yes, it's a wonderful profession. There are so much talented and so much good products are coming out of that. But here you should realize that if you take a pan-India, there are almost 10 times more engineers living with this, doing the same profession of planning the building. So there, end of the day, the bread and butter is in question. So their National Building Code has clearly specified the rights. So as per the National Building Code guidelines, the engineers currently have the freedom to plan to any extent. So that is the rule as per the policy of National Building Code, and which has been happening over the years. So there are almost, if that exclusivity goes to architect, there will be 10 times more engineers who will be suffering. And like Avinash Shirode sir pointed out, end of the day, the talent is what matters. So if the talent is not good, definitely, say for my house, my house was designed by an architect. I'm proud of stating that. For most of the projects which we do, we are so proud of the architects there. But then affordability is a question. So there are so much of people, if it becomes an
why do you all, sorry,
so
why
much
do
of
you all
people
feel that architects are expensive? Why do you all feel that architects are expensive? They're not.
No, so I'm coming to the point where we have to balance that. So it has to be given to the investor to decide whom they have to employ, whom they have to appoint, and based on the talent and the creation. Yes, there are very good architects, there are very good engineers also who are doing in the planning. There are so many other professions also. So if it becomes an exclusive right, they were earning bread and butter for the last 30 or 40 years using this same engineering planning. So which they might lose that totally. So that is a big question as far as engineers are concerned. And that is why we don't say that we have a lot of respect for architects. We are good friends with them. But the problem is that we are representing that big, huge number of civil engineers who are making their bread and butter and from the planning. And if you can see the number of plans submitted in any places across the country, so how many number of plans architects are giving? Almost 10 times the volume is being handled by engineering fraternity. And there is also classification among the engineering fraternities itself, diploma holders and this. So right of planning currently is there and they are earning their bread and butter. That is why we are also worried, because we have a lot of, we love to have good architects, good projects, this thing. And then based on the skill, we should definitely work together. But then we should also understand the fact that there are such a big number of people who are dependent on this industry. And if an act comes and it becomes a law, then this much of huge population will lose their bread and butter. And that's one point which I would like to.
I can also add, Mr. Joseph. I can also add that speaking on behalf as a president of my fraternity, there are thousands of architects like the engineers who are out of bread and butter because you guys are taking our jobs, what is rightfully ours.
No. Engineers have never snatched anybody's project. And it's not a question of bread and butter.
Yeah, Ajith sir.
Yeah, I think I would like to say something here. See, very important thing we should understand, at least for several hundreds of years, if you go in the past, and even if you come to the latest situation as on today, every profession and every course has been designed. There's a design for a course. And their design shows how and what should be taught so that he can become something. For example, for say for Anil Joseph is a structural engineer. Of course, from after became a civil engineer, he became a structural engineer. So what all subjects are taught for him in the civil engineering? What all subjects have been taught to him as far as structural engineering are highly specific. And those specific subjects, many of them which has made him a high specialist in that particular subject are never taught to us. But you should also understand, here similarly in architecture, our course is designed specifically to be the designer. If you see time immemorial, always, you are talking about Taj Mahal, the designed by an architect, and all those things time immemorial. If you really look at, the architect has a role to play. Number two, I would like to tell you one very important. We are talking about, I am happy that, Anil, that your people are not in United States or in Australia and other places in the country, in the world, where they'll be immediately taken action by the government. Only people who have completed architecture in the course is slightly shorter course there. Even then, they are very specific about it. Nobody will be able to sign any paper, not even any paper, any of these places, countries, if you are not an architect. Why is it? Because, now one more thing I'd like to say here. For example, you are a structural engineer. You will never be able to do anything generally. Maybe you are a special, there may be some people who are doing very well. I understand. I'm not questioning that. But generally, if you look at, then a structural engineer will never be able to put their inputs into electrical, even advisory level. Similarly, an electrical fellow cannot put your advisory role into structural engineering. This is a very important thing you should understand. So what I'm trying to say here is, so we bearers, the architectural profession, I would be very happy. I would love, I am sure, Habeeb, if you can share our curriculum with all these engineers and show how much it is covered in that. It is covered. It is simply because we are to know everything. We are what you call, you cannot say, apart from architecture, you can really say that, that we are never master of any of those, but we know everything. We have been taught, we have been trained, we have been distinct so that we know. I don't know how many of you might have seen an old film, 30, 40 years called Towering Inferno. In that Towering Inferno film, you have seen that, in Towering Inferno, Suryaprakash, if you see, remember that big tower in San Francisco is going into flames. The whole tower, which is some 60 floors tall. The only person who knows the entire thing is architect. You can see him running around the place and he's going around. He knows where are the electrical this thing, where is the water supply problem, where is this thing. He goes, he knows everything in and out of it. Not that he's an expert on it. He knows. This knowledge that is given to an architect by we stand. I know it much more now because last 7-8 years now I'm running an architecture school. You know how
now, can I please bring you all to the question of, responsibilities that come with any designation, be as an architect or as an engineer. So here is a situation where there is the Council of Architecture, where you have registered architects who are qualified people with the minimum of BArch or whatever. And we also have situations where there are people, BTech graduates becoming engineers and practicing engineers. Now, in a situation of legal question, how do we place responsibility and accountability on people? Now, when we say that anybody with I'm for democracy and broad basing it as much as possible, on which I tend to agree with Shri Avinash. But at the same time, the question of accountability comes into play. When that comes into play, And I don't think a membership of the Council of Architecture is only about, designation of as an architect. There are also several provisions in the Act which tells us how a breach of the provisions of the Act violation would be met with penal punishment. It's 100 rupees here, 200 rupees there, etc., given the. So how do you fix the accountability? I think this applies to both the professions, since we are only engineers and architects in this here. So I think, isn't that a serious issue? Like, for instance, when an apartment needs to be demolished because it is in violation of the laws, because a building just caves in because the structural engineering aspects are not good, or another building which has been built up to some level but which just gives up because the architectural design was faulty. Aren't these issues which also should come into play when we discuss the legal questions of designations? Shri Habeeb Khan.
Of course, I mean, the architect is responsible. And how many times have you heard a structural engineer going to jail or a civil engineer going to jail when a building is the architect who goes in? You guys don't want to have your cake, eat it too, you want to splash it all over as well. I mean, see, even a building falls down, the first person to be arrested is the architect. I mean, just see the news, national news. So the responsibility, of course, lies with the architect, and that is why the architect has to coordinate. Like Ajith Sahab just said, the architect is the coordinator. The responsibility has to lie with the architect, and it will come when you have more stricter laws, when you will have the onus of authorship of the design, when you have the exclusivity of architectural design, the responsibility will lie with the architect.
No, my question is very simple. I agree with you, but my question is very simple.
I want to ask
See,
a question.
when I will come to you. I just flag one more point, and you may also want to respond to that as well. See, it is when it is a question of societal harm. Societal harm is an issue which affects me as a layperson. You are structural engineers, you are architects. So whom do I turn to? Whom do I hold responsible as an individual? When I go to the law, the Supreme Court says something. The several high courts have said something about who is an architect, who is not an architect, who can practice, who cannot practice, and it applies to civil and structural engineers as well. So I think the societal harm dimension is important here, whether it applies to you architects or to the civil engineers. Habeeb Khan.
Well, of course it is. It is very important. Ultimately, it's for the society that we're working for. But if a registered architect has signed, the responsibility lies with him, isn't it? But if a registered architect has not signed, then whom are you going to catch hold of?
Yep, Sri Suryaprakash.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask a question to Habeeb Khan. How many architects are arrested post-Gujarat earthquake due to devastation? And how many?
No, I don't have the data. I have worked in Gujarat after the devastation for a long, long time for the rehabilitation, but I don't have the data. I can't tell you offhand how many architects were arrested.
Then how did you make a statement that structural engineer is not arrested and only architects are arrested?
There have been instances.
I know how many structural engineers are arrested.
There have been so many.
I know how many structural engineers are arrested post-Gujarat earthquake. I had to fly to Ahmedabad to restore the buildings because there is no structural
I am aware
engineer.
of it, yes.
All are arrested post-Gujarat earthquake. There are no structural engineers available to do
including the architects.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes,
how many architects are arrested?
Absolutely right. So what's wrong in that?
No. What I'm saying
What's wrong
is,
in that?
No. Architects should not have been there now in Gujarat because so much of devastation, so much of ill planning, so much of ill-built environment, so many people lost lives. What is the accountability of architects in Gujarat, post-Gujarat earthquake?
No, you are taking the responsibility of the structural safety of the building, isn't it? You told in your initial statement.
Yeah,
that is the responsibility and the safety of the architects.
What we are saying. Structural safety is the domain of engineers, and unfortunately,
so if the lives are lost,
yes, I am coming.
The lives are lost.
To speak. The unfortunate thing in India is Engineers Act is not there, and so engineer cannot be made accountable legally for any ill planning or ill design. And why architect wants to go to jail if engineer does a mistake?
You engineering fraternity have been very smart that they are not being able to pass a bill.
No, it's not
you
that.
You don't want to take the responsibility.
It's not that.
No, that's
it is not like that. It's
very
not
vague
like that.
and loose statement, Habeeb. That's not correct.
It's
No,
not
no,
like
I mean, see, just understand. Let's see, understand. The discussion is going in the wrong direction totally.
yeah,
No, no.
it should not be.
I would
That
rather
was
have
not the question asked, and
Yeah.
that is no one is trying to justify who is important, who is not important. The discussion is going in the wrong direction. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, it's okay. We'll go to Avinash.
I'm not making loose statements. You can
Ajith,
verify
yes.
the facts.
See, when Mr. Nair had asked about the approvals or certifications and all that, now just tell me, when we submit a plan, whoever submits, whether architect or engineer or something, the approving authority, what the hell they check? They check only whether it is done as per the bylaws, whether FSI has not violated, whether the side margins are okay, whether the height is okay, whether the parking is okay, whether the tenement capacity is okay, and all that and all that. Has any plan up till now been rejected because it was a bad elevation, because it was a bad perspective, whether because it was a bad bird's eye view or something? Though approving authorities absolutely do not do anything on that because they don't want to, they are not supposed to. So as far as the approving authorities are concerned, and nowadays these approvals are done online by DCPR and other softwares. So that is one thing. Now, Mr. Suryaprakash has a question about the Bhuj earthquake. Yeah, the revision of National Building Code was started only after that because hundreds and thousands of buildings were collapsed because it was only the fancy designs by architects in the name of beauty and artistry. So they had totally violated the structural safety of the buildings and the earthquake resistant natural disasters, man-made disasters, design requirements. So what is most important is, as I said, which irritated you people, that engineer is in a better place to design plan, architectural plan also, because by mathematical fundamentals. And he sits in 4 chairs. First as a planner, second as a designer, structural designer or CC designer, third as a contractor. Because even if you are such a wonderful, beautiful, artistic planning, but whether it is feasible to construct. And the last one, the person who is going to own that project as well as product, the owner, whether it really suits to his pocket. So unless a person, a professional sits in all these 4 chairs, he cannot be a successful professional. So that is the most important thing. Now about the technology advancement and all that. Now we have got all those AutoCAD, 3D Max, Sketch, and all those things. We really don't require any architect or engineer to plan a building because they have all those things. And most of the people, they are using all these new software tools. And let me tell you my experience in Nashik, that one person in an architect's office, he was just a clerk, absolutely having no knowledge of architecture or engineering. And he was the best person to do the perspectives and 3D views and all that. And most of the architects, they used to rush to him to get those things. So as I said, imagination is nobody's monopoly and it cannot be restricted to a person. Definitely, your fundamentals and background does help in a better planning. So these are most important things. Architectural planning is a very small portion of the whole project. The strength, stability, durability, economy. Economy is the most important thing. And this maintainability, because I have seen a project, the weather sheds were designed, planned in such a way that even the sentry could not be removed after the concreting. And there was no chance for cleaning that afterwards. So it remained as a junk all the time. So all those things have to be considered as far as the planning is concerned. And that's why I always make a bold statement that engineers can do everything without architects, right from planning to completion. But architects cannot do anything without engineers.
Yeah. So I want Ms. Sapna to come in. She's been holding her hand up for a long time.
Yeah. Mr. Nebut, I got an email from you where there was a point for the need for a healthy architect-engineer interface and interactivity.
Yeah.
In fact, I think today's discussion is all about mudslinging. I can't see any healthy discussion. It's like putting on each other that I'm better or I'm better. But here the discussion is not who is better. The discussion is just let all the people do whatever they do, what they're taught for. You know, it is like, as Mr. Avinash said, because of the technologies, there's AutoCAD, there's so much of soft skills, so we don't need architect, engineer. For that matter, Google, I don't need a doctor, because Google tells me if I have a stomachache, I have so and so medicine. So that means all the professions fail just because technology has advanced to that extent. I think that let us come to a very healthy discussion. Healthy discussion is just that architectural services. We are not saying planning of all services. We are just saying architectural services is the domain of an architect, and structural planning is the domain of a structural engineer. Is so simple. I mean, why are we just trying to tell I am better or I am better? Why can't we just survive with a very healthy, working? Because see, I'm a chief architect of Punjab, so all my projects I can't do without the structural engineer, without the civil engineer. But how can a civil engineer say that I can do everything without an architect? It's just encroaching each other's field. I think it's time, let us focus on that point of healthy interaction or not stop this mudslinging, and I'm totally resentful towards that.
Okay, Ajith.
I would like to, we are only talking about the Supreme Court ruling which happened about a few months back, a couple of more, less than that.
Yeah.
I think let us go back a few months behind. There was another decision by Supreme Court which was hanging fire for the last 30 years, 25 years maybe, 30 years. That is, who is supreme to manage the architecture education, architecture education. So all these years, it was said very clearly, and many courts in High Court and every level, they were always saying, many courts said that it is AICTE, and some courts said it's the Council of Architecture. But in the last Supreme Court, there was a final verdict. It came after so many years of sitting at the court. The Honorable Supreme Court said, AICTE, which is an engineering organization, has nothing to do with architecture. So architecture has to be, so AICTE controls entire architecture, entire engineering. AICTE even controls building, what we call management service, that is management courses, everything. But they said, no, architecture is different. Architecture, only architects can manage. Architecture, only Council of Architecture can manage. Very clear, specifically clear. So earlier, like Habeeb said here some time back, Habeeb was very clear about it. He said, this is not the end of the world. We have just come to some middle level here. So it's not the end of the world. And another very important thing I would like to say to Mr. Avinash when he was telling about, he was talking about why no projects has been rejected because it is not aesthetically appealing. It should be rejected. There are already so many countries, so many cities in the country where they have what we call as an art commission. I don't know whether Mr. Avinash is aware of that. Art commission. Art commission squarely rejects. It includes, I can give you the list. Give me 1 week time, 2-3 days time, list of projects which has been rejected. The engineer design projects have been rejected by Art Commission of Delhi. Many Art Commission. Why? Because Art Commission is mainly, that is where architecture comes.
It's only for habitat structures.
No,
and habitat zones.
No.
Not
And
for
one more thing, no, it's not that. One more thing I'd like to say.
You should see
Avinash,
the process. You see the process abroad.
Exactly.
You should see the process abroad of approval. You have to justify, the architect has to justify what is the kind of the building, the material that he's using, what is the look of the building. It takes 2 months to take public opinion. An architect has to justify. It is unfortunate that in India you don't do it, and that is why where we are.
And one more thing I'd like to say here, please listen. He was also, there was a saying that that architect buildings and the cost of buildings. In my school, and many schools maybe, my school of architecture I'm talking about, from second year and third year students are put into a 2 months program on how to design a cost-effective house, a 50 square meter house which is sustainable. That's a research program they're doing. So things are changing now. It's not anymore because we are giving so much importance to the cost. The cost factor is so very important. It's not that maybe iconic structures. Please understand the difference between iconic structure and a structure which is a habitable structure like you are saying. In an iconic structure, our this thing is very different. In iconic structure, there could be much more higher. If an ordinary structure costs you 2,000, 3,000 rupees per square feet, the iconic structure, the builder himself want it iconic, he is ready to spend another 2,000 rupees. It doesn't mean it is because the mistake of architect. So we have to understand that. So the thing, as I said, AICT's decision is a very important decision. That decision overrules everything. Otherwise, we'll also come under AICT. And even though there is no wording about architecture in that, AICT would have come in because the court, the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court went through the whole thing and made it very clear. Look, architecture is different. Architecture is not engineering. Engineering is not architecture. Engineers cannot be here. Architect cannot be there. Very clear. So we are a separate group. Please understand that we have and again, also let me tell you, we need to in the future, we need to be very, very clear about it. It has to be in future, if you need good, beautiful, excellent buildings which are strong, which are safe, which are having, see, some apartments where you stay, you know how much is so poorly how designed the plumbing work is there. See, so now in future we need a very good partnership, excellent partnership, but there is nobody else in that partnership who can lead the partnership than a trained, educated architect.
Yeah, sure.
Just I have another VC coming in at 12, so I'll have to.
Okay, no, we are running out of time. Yeah, we are also running out of time. I just want to flag some of the comments and questions that have come up from our attendees. Mr. Atul Goyal points out that engineers had actually attempted to get an Engineers Act enacted, and this was done by CAI, IASTRUCTE on several occasions and at several platforms since 1980. Unfortunately, it did not get into become an act because of the disinterestedness of the lawmakers. So that's a point made by Atul Goyal. Thank you, Atul, for pointing that out to our panelists. We have another question from an aspiring architect who says, everybody is asking for experience. Where do we gain experience unless we do work? So one is looking for the skills so that in case, it's a major issue among young generation, whether you want to become an engineer or an architect. Obviously, that is not within the purview of this panel discussion. So I am leaving it at that. Now, another question from Godfrey S. Velo, who asks this question, to whom does a person who wants to construct a building or a structure goes first? His position is that it is to the project engineer, not to the architect. That is a question that has to be debated. Now, Ranganath Devappa tells us that all of us are qualified to prepare designs. Obviously, he's an engineer. All of us are qualified to prepare designs in each of our specializations. Let's learn to live and let live. That's a very interesting point. That is the thrust of this panel discussion we have had over the last 1.5 hours here. I think that is a very nice way of putting it. We are thankful to you, Devappa. And then I have one or two small points which I want to flag before we part. This is from generally youngsters, mostly youngsters who feel that discussion has been good, and some of them want to actually come onto the platform and discuss issues, but we are terribly short of time. We are sorry to Anand Vats who wanted this experience question to be handled. And there is Shivraman Rajendran who says the question is not who should lead the project or who is important. More important thing is the verdict of the Supreme Court. And we need to focus on that rather than on issues of turf and other questions. So I think the attendees have been very active in responding to everything that has been said here. And I thank each one of them for this. So to wind up our discussion, I think regardless of how we want to look at the way the discussion has progressed, let me be absolutely clear from the construction philosophy that we are very clear about this. We are talking about professions and the manner in which professions are challenged, in diverse ways. Probably the Supreme Court verdict is one of them. And the tangibility and intangibility issue that Sri Habeeb Khan flagged is also very crucial, because the intangible nature of a design and perspective of design, which actually results in the structural engineers' realization of their design. I think those are very important for the kind of built up spaces that we will have across the country tomorrow. And of course, things are being decided more and more by technology. And obviously, technology might be there, but the skill set of the individual, the human individual, is paramount. I think the manner in which this discussion has gone, I believe and hope that despite the differences, I think differences need to be there. Unless we have differences, we are not going to progress as a society. So I'm thankful to all of you. I would welcome all of you to say one small sentence as by way of parting. Shri Habeeb Khan.
See, I once again reiterate, once again say to tell to everyone that we are a part of the same thing, same coin, same feather, same whatever you want to call it. We have to survive together. We have to work together. Each one has its own role defined. And in today's world and for the future of our profession, everyone has to work together, whether it is architects or any kind of specialized engineering services. And it's not a question of proving. I'm not trying to prove that architects are better or more important, but all of us are important in the entire process. We have to work together, and that's the bottom line of it. Let us respect each other's skills, let us respect each other's expertise, and let us grow together.
Avinash.
Yeah, no confrontation, no competition, only cooperation, respect each other, work together for the society, because we are accountable and answerable to the society and not to individuals.
Thank you, sir. Shri Anil Joseph.
Yeah, this construction industry is a teamwork and everybody has to play their role. So we have to balance each other and together. And this is a very, I will say that this is a very productive meeting, even though there are arguments from both sides. If we hear both sides only, then we can come to a solution. And I think this will be a stepping stone to come up with a solution to this entire problem, which is there for last 50 years.
Thank you. Shri Suryaprakash.
Yeah, thank you, Construction Philosophy, for arranging a nice meeting. And I hope it's only a beginning and it will lead to healthy discussions and a better built environment in future with the cooperation of all the professionals. Thank you.
Shri Ajith, I am keeping you for the last, Shri Ajith.
Yeah, okay. See, basically,
Ajith.
Yeah, I'm calling. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. See, basically, we have to understand one thing. All the designs which is done by the architects, it can be realized only by the engineers. It's a very, very important thing. And if an engineer has to make a good construction, you should have a good design with him. It can be done only by the architect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sapna.
Yeah, just want to add this, that we actually need to, for any project, both the architects and engineers are must. It requires both the professions, and it's time to respect each other and just work together. That's it.
Thank you very much. Let me also
platform. I want to add so much for this platform, because what our society actually needs is the awareness. So you platform giving us the awareness what both professions. What is the difference between both professions? And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. See, let me.
Mr. Debu, one request from us. Please save, before leaving, please save the chat window as well as question and answers, and share it with the panelists.
No, but what we are planning to do from the side of construction philosophy, we shall be publishing this. We shall be sending the transcript of your statements to you, and we will have it. Obviously, when we speak extempore, there could be words, phrases that we would rather not want there in print. So we will be going to the print with this material, but we will be sending the transcripts to each one of you, and we shall get it corrected, and we shall be having this dialogue on the pages of construction philosophy as soon as the lockout is off, and we all, yeah, Ajith.
I would like to say one thing here very correctly. I think you have proved the name of your magazine, Construction Philosophy. Now, what all we have discussed are philosophies.
True. Very true.
Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nebu. Your turn. Thank you very much from my part. I'm so I feel proud that I could interact with people like you. You are very important people in India. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much from Construction Philosophy. On behalf of Construction Philosophy, I would again like to thank you all for being here, blessing us with your valuable opinions, views. So we will meet again. This is not the end. This is just a beginning. Thank you so much.
It's always said that an architect's dream is a structural engineer's nightmare. So we will grow together, I think. We'll be in touch. So nice day to you. Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.